All right, everyone, buckle up because today we're taking a deep dive into the world of herpes.
Ooh, yeah, getting right into it.
No time to waste, right? You know we love to tackle the big topics here, and we've gotten so many requests from you all about this one.
I have to say, this book you guys sent over, The Good News But the Bad News, by Terri Warren, it's like the ultimate guide to herpes. Seriously.
For real, she covers everything, so if you've ever had questions about herpes, whether it's about you or a partner, you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the way Warren explains things, it's like she's just having a conversation with you. No judgment, just straight facts.
Exactly. She cuts through all the noise and gives you the information you need in a way that's easy to understand. So let's start with the basics, shall we? What exactly is herpes?
Well, simply put, herpes is a viral infection.
Okay, so far so good.
But here's the thing about this virus. It's kind of like that house guest that just never leaves, even when you've hinted that it's time to go.
Oh, I know that house guest.
Right. They just keep coming back for more, even when you wish they wouldn't.
So those recurring sores everyone talks about, that's the virus basically throwing a party on your skin, right?
Exactly. But here's the thing, and Warren debunks this myth. Those weird skin growths you get that just never seem to go away, or those full-body rashes,
Yeah.
or even, and this is kind of out there, a fishy odor.
Okay, hold on. A fishy odor. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, it sounds strange, but some people associate it with herpes. But here's the thing, none of those things are actually herpes.
So no need to go sniffing around trying to diagnose ourselves. Got
Yes,
it.
exactly. They're often signs of something else entirely. And this is why getting accurate information is so important.
100%. So you mentioned this pesky virus likes to overstay its welcome. Are we talking about just one type of herpes, or are there different strains of this party animal?
Great question. And you're right to call it a party animal because it comes in multiple flavors, so to speak. There are two main types of herpes, simplex virus or HSV.
Okay, so what, like a dynamic duo of viral mischief? Lay it on me.
You got it. We've got HSV-1 and its partner in crime, HSV-2. Now, while both of these can cause sores in both the oral and genital areas, they do have their preferred spots.
Okay, they like to mix it up a bit, but they each have their home turf.
Exactly. HSV-1 is usually the culprit behind those unwelcome cold sores.
Ah, the classic cold sore, always showing up at the worst possible times.
Right. And then we've got HSV-2, which is more often associated with genital herpes.
So they have their territories, but they like to visit each other's neighborhoods sometimes.
Exactly. Now, how this transmission thing even happens, well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Is it only when you can see a sore? Because honestly, that's what I always thought.
And that's a super common misconception. You don't always need a visible sore to transmit the virus.
Wait, are you serious? You can pass it on even when everything looks totally normal.
You got it.
Mm.
Herpes spreads through skin-to-skin contact. But, and this is a big but, you don't need to have a visible sore to do it.
All right, you've officially blown my mind. So even if you think you're in the clear, you could be spreading the virus without even realizing it.
It's true, and that's why it's so important to understand this concept of asymptomatic shedding.
Asymptomatic shedding, that sounds not great. Break that down for me.
Basically, it just means that the virus can be present on your skin, ready to transmit, even when you don't have any signs of an outbreak.
Okay, yeah. That definitely adds a whole new level of complexity to things, doesn't it?
It does. And here's another layer. HSV-1 and HSV-2. They don't always play by the same rules.
Oh, so they're like the fraternal twins of the herpes world. Tell me more.
Well, research shows that HSV-2 tends to be a bit more active, shall we say, than HSV-1, particularly in the genital area. It's more prone to shedding.
So even though they can both cause trouble in different areas, HSV-2 is more likely to be spreading the love, so to speak. That makes sense.
It does, and it's why understanding the nuances of shedding is so important.
Okay, so we've established that herpes can be kind of a sneaky ninja.
That's one way to put it.
Which makes me wonder, how do you even know if you have it in the first place? That seems like it could be tricky to diagnose.
You're absolutely right. Diagnosis can be tricky, and that's something Warren emphasizes a lot in the book. You can't just rely on a visual exam alone.
So if you can't rely on a visual exam, how do you know if you have herpes? Asking for a friend.
Well, you're in luck, because Warren gives us the rundown on exactly that.
Ah.
And spoiler alert, testing is key.
Okay, makes sense. But what kind of tests are we talking about here?
So there are two main types that are super important. Swab tests and blood tests.
Swab tests, blood tests. All right, break those down for me. What's the difference?
So let's say you've got a suspicious sore that's making an unwelcome appearance. That's where a swab test comes in.
Okay, so they take a sample directly from the sore.
Exactly. They swab it and send it off to the lab to see if the herpes virus is present.
So that's like the smoking gun, proof positive that herpes is on the scene.
You got it. But, and this is where the blood test comes in, the swab test can't tell you which type of herpes you have. It can tell you that you have herpes, but not the type.
Ah, so that's where the blood test steps up to the plate.
Exactly. A blood test can differentiate between HSV-1 and HSV-2.
Okay, I'm sensing another question coming on here. Why is it such a big deal to know which type you have?
It's a great question, and honestly, it can make a world of difference, especially when it comes to managing the virus and even just having conversations with partners.
Oh, so.
Well, remember how we talked about shedding rates?
Yeah.
HSV-1 and HSV-2, they've got different patterns, which impacts how likely they are to transmit.
Right, HSV2 is kind of the overshare of the two, right?
That's one way to put it. Plus, when HSV-1 decides to set up shop in the genital area, it tends to be a little less, well, let's just say it's a little less active than HSV-2.
Interesting. Less prone to those surprise visits, huh?
Exactly. So knowing the type just gives you a clearer picture of what you're dealing with, which can be really empowering. And Warren talks a lot about the different blood tests out there because, well, it can get kind of confusing.
Oh, I bet. Not all tests are created equal, right?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
She points out that those older blood tests, the ones they used to use back in the day, they're actually not that reliable.
Oh, no, really? What are they called again?
They're called crude antigen tests, and unfortunately, they can lead to misdiagnoses, especially when you're trying to tell the difference between HSV-1 and HSV-2.
Wow, that's a pretty big deal. So if those aren't the ones to get, what should we be asking for? What's the gold standard these days?
The tests you want to look for are called type-specific IgG blood tests. Instead of just looking for any herpes antibodies, these tests look for the specific antibodies that your body makes in response to each type, whether it's HSV-1 or HSV-2.
Okay, wait, back up a sec. Antibodies, those are the good guys, right? The ones fighting off the virus.
You got it. Think of antibodies like your immune system's own personal security team. They're trained to recognize and fight off specific intruders, like viruses or bacteria.
So when these fancy blood tests detect those antibodies, it's a good indication that you've been exposed to that specific type of herpes.
Precisely. And once you get those test results back, well, that's where a conversation with your healthcare provider is key.
Totally. Don't try to decipher those results on your own.
Exactly. They're there to help you interpret the results, make sure you understand what they mean, and discuss the best way to move forward.
Always good advice. Knowledge is power, right? So we know how to ID the uninvited guest, but the million-dollar question is, how do you manage it? That's what I'm really curious about. So we know how to spot herpes, but what about kicking it to the curb? Is there a magic bullet for this thing?
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but
Yeah.
no magic bullet just yet. At least not in the make it disappear completely kind of way.
Figures. So what's the next best thing? What can people do to actually manage herpes?
The good news is there's a lot you can do. And Warren does a great job of laying out your options. Medication is often a big part of that.
Okay, so let's talk meds. What are we working with here?
When it comes to herpes, the heavy hitters are antiviral medications. Warren focuses on 3 in particular: acyclovir, valacyclovir, or Veltrex as it's more commonly known, and famciclovir, which you might have heard of as Famvir.
All right, so acyclovir, Valtrex, Famvir, got it. But how do these antivirals actually work? What do they do?
They're like that friend who always knows how to shut down a party that's getting out of control.
Love those friends.
Right. They can't completely kick the virus out, but they can stop it from multiplying and spreading. They interfere with the virus's replication process.
So they keep those viral parties from becoming full-blown ragers.
Exactly.
I'm all for that. But how are these medications actually taken? Is it like a one-size-fits-all approach?
Not at all. There are actually 2 main ways these antivirals are used to manage herpes: suppressive therapy and episodic therapy.
Okay, so 2 different game plans for tackling the same problem. I like it. What's the difference?
Think of suppressive therapy as basically taking a daily vitamin for herpes. You take a low dose of the medication every single day, regardless of whether you're having an outbreak or not.
So it's kind of like staying one step ahead, right? Keeping the virus on lockdown.
Exactly. And it's a really effective option for people who tend to have frequent outbreaks or those who want to minimize the risk of transmission to a partner.
Makes sense. So it's like a preemptive strike against those viral parties.
You got it. Now, Episodic therapy, that's a little different.
Okay, how so? When would someone opt for episodic therapy?
This is more like having that go-to remedy in your medicine cabinet for when you feel a cold coming on. You know, those first signs of trouble.
Ah, like that telltale tingle. I know it well.
Exactly. With episodic therapy, you only take the antiviral when you feel those early symptoms of an outbreak or when you actually have a sore.
Got it. So it's more of an as-needed kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense. But besides medication, what about dealing with those moments when you are having an outbreak? What can people do to find some relief?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about grinning and bearing it. Warren talks a lot about practical tips for managing symptoms. Simple things like over-the-counter pain relievers can make a world of difference.
Mhm.
And then there are things like applying a cold compress and ice pack to the area just to help soothe things.
Ah, the good old ice pack. Can't go wrong with that.
Nope. And keeping the area clean and dry is really important.
So simple, but so important. Now, I do want to touch on something that I know can be a really sensitive topic, herpes and relationships.
I agree it's important to address.
It can feel like a whole other layer of complexity, right?
It definitely can. But it's something Warren tackles head on in the book. And one of the biggest things people struggle with is how to tell a partner they have herpes.
Oh, I can only imagine how daunting that conversation must feel. Any advice on how to navigate that based on Warren's expertise?
Honesty is key, of course,
Yeah.
but she really stresses the importance of empathy as well, putting yourself in your partner's shoes and trying to understand their perspective.
That's so important. It's about fostering open communication, really hearing each other out.
Absolutely. And choosing the right time and place to have that conversation can make a world of difference, too. Somewhere you both feel comfortable and can really talk openly.
Absolutely. Create that safe space for dialogue. Now, let's be real for a second. Getting diagnosed with herpes can be an emotional roller coaster. There's often a lot of fear and anxiety that comes with it. What does Warren have to say about dealing with those feelings?
You know, she really emphasizes that those feelings are totally normal. It's important to acknowledge them and allow yourself to feel them. And she encourages people to seek out support, whether it's through therapy, support groups, or just talking to trusted friends and family.
It's so important to have those people you can lean on, those safe spaces to process everything.
100%. And I think this ties into something really important that Warren highlights throughout the book. Taking care of your mental and emotional health is just as crucial as managing the physical aspects of herpes.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I want to touch on. The link between herpes and other STIs, particularly HIV.
Definitely an important connection to understand.
Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and it's crucial to have accurate information. So, what's the deal with herpes and HIV?
Well, one thing Warren points out is that having HSV2 can actually increase your risk of contracting HIV.
Really? See, I think a lot of people might not know that. Why is that? What's the link there?
It comes down to how HSV2 interacts with our body's defenses. Remember those little breaks in the skin we talked about? Even when there are no visible sores, HSV2 can create these microscopic openings that make it easier for other viruses, including HIV, to enter the body.
Wow, so it's like HSV2 weakens our defenses, making us more susceptible.
In a way, yes. And this is why practicing safe sex, using condoms consistently, and getting tested regularly for HIV and other STIs is absolutely crucial, regardless of your herpes status.
Such an important message. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here today, and I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a really insightful deep dive.
It really has, but I'm sure people are going to want to keep learning. Where can they go for more information? Besides reading Warren's book, of course.
Definitely check out her clinic's website. She's got a ton of great resources there. Plus, there are some other fantastic organizations like the CDC and the American Sexual Health Association, or ASHA. They've got a wealth of reliable information on their websites as well.
Awesome. We'll be sure to link to all of those in the show notes. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive into the world of herpes?
I think the biggest takeaway from Warren's book is this: knowledge is power. The more you know about herpes, the more empowered you are to manage it effectively and live a full, healthy life.
100%. It's about breaking down the stigma, having open conversations, and supporting each other along the way. And on that note, a huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and take care.